So nowadays, apart from the government state pension, which we're all going to get when we're in our 60s, you're probably going to have one of two pensions, either a defined benefit pension, also known as a final salary pension, or a defined contribution pension. And in this video, we're going to explore the difference between the two and which one might be best for you. A defined benefit pension is one that attempts to give you a guaranteed income for the rest of your life from a set retirement age. There's no pot of cash, just a guaranteed promise to pay you an income for the rest of your life. The income you receive at the scheme retirement age will be based on a formula that uses the salary you've earned with your company plus the number of years you've worked for that company. And basically, the higher your salary has been and the longer you've worked for the company, the greater your pension income should be. Defined benefit pensions are known as final salary pensions because the link to the salary is usually your final salary at the end, just before you retire. But it's important to be aware that not all defined benefit pensions use your final salary as the salary link. Some will use your average salary over a number of years. All public sector workers will generally have a defined benefit pension as their retirement package. A defined contribution pension, also known as a money purchase pension, means you have your own pension pot, a bit like your own savings account, which you, your employer, and the government via tax relief pay into. At the point you retire, your pension would have been invested over a number of years in the hopes of getting a decent return. When you hit your retirement date or the point you choose to retire, there is no guaranteed income offered. Just the pot value on the day you retire, and then you decide how you make withdrawals from that pot. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of a defined benefit and a defined contribution pension. Starting with the defined benefit, and in terms of advantages, the major advantage you've got with a defined benefit pension is that it's offering you a secure income for the rest of your life. You're going to know what you're going to be getting in retirement. Another advantage is that there's also usually offered a reduced secure income for your spouse. So if you die before your spouse, usually most defined benefit schemes will offer a reduced income that's guaranteed for the rest of your spouse's life. Income is usually inflation protected in a defined benefit pension. So as you start to receive your income in retirement, this will usually rise with inflation over the years. And there's little risk involved with a defined benefit pension because you're not investing the money. You don't need to worry about what the stock market's doing. So if you're very low risk, this is ideal for you. Now, of course, there are disadvantages to a defined benefit pension. And one of the disadvantages is that you lose flexibility in your income in retirement. So at the point you retire and take your defined benefit pension income and you start to receive that, you can't change that. That is the income you're going to receive for the rest of your life. The pension will die on second death, so there may be a reduced income offered to your spouse, but if you have no spouse, or your spouse has died before you, or when your spouse eventually dies, the pension ends. There's nothing available for your children or other family members. If you decide you want to retire early and you have a defined benefit pension scheme, the retirement income you're offered will usually be reduced. This is because the scheme now has to pay you for longer than was originally expected. And whilst we talk about giving you a guaranteed secure income for the rest of your life, of course nothing's completely guaranteed. The pension scheme will be reliant on the company providing the scheme to remain solvent and in business. Now, whilst defined benefit pension schemes, the accounts have their own separate funding, separate from the company does have to keep putting money into the scheme to ensure it's well funded, and most defined benefit schemes are actually underfunded at present. So if the company sponsoring the scheme goes bust, or it's in an industry that no longer is relevant and it's losing sales money, then of course who's going to be funding that pension scheme over the long term? It might fail and you're left with reduced benefits in this scheme. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of a defined contribution pension. Starting with the advantages, the big advantage with a defined contribution is that you are in control of the pot. You can choose your own investment strategy, and hopefully it's a good one. you can consolidate lots of smaller pensions into one pot. You have the option to take money out of your defined contribution pension from age 55 and at any point you want, usually without penalty, but dependent on the provider you use. And the big thing is you have full flexibility on how you withdraw your income from a defined contribution pot. So if you want to take more income out in the early years of retirement, you could, and less in the later years of retirement to fit your lifestyle. And at the end of your life, what's left in the pot can be passed on to whoever you want. So if you have a spouse, you could leave your pot to your spouse, and then when they go, they could leave what's left in the pot to your children, and so on and so on. Now, in terms of the disadvantages of a defined contribution pension, of course, the big one is if your investment strategy goes wrong. Because with the pot being invested, if you have poor returns, that's seriously going to damage the value of your pension. And also, the less you pay into the pension over the years, the less it's going to be worth. So your pot is going to be very dependent on how much you pay into that pension. And when you reach retirement, of course, there's no guaranteed income at the end. You can secure a guaranteed income for life from purchasing what's called an annuity, but the rates you're going to be offered and the income you're going to be offered is likely to be far less than that from a defined benefit pension. And by taking withdrawals on a flexible basis, it's going to need far more monitoring of the pension. You're going to need a very thorough plan to ensure that your pension pot doesn't run out before you. So when it comes to defined benefit pension versus a defined contribution, unfortunately there's no clear winner. It will very much depend on your individual circumstances and what you want out of your retirement pot. Generally, although not always the case, if you're someone that's very cautious, you don't have a family or a partner, and the defined benefit pension is your only type of secure income, then the defined benefit pension is likely to be best for you. But if you're someone with a family, you've got a more adventurous attitude to investment risk, you've already got some other forms of secure income, then a defined contribution might suit your lifestyle more. And it can be the case that if you have a private sector defined benefit pension, you could potentially transfer that into a defined contribution pension and get all the flexibilities that brings. However, if you work in the public sector, it's unlikely you will have the option of being able to transfer away from a defined benefit pension. Nowadays, if you're starting a new job, it's unlikely your employer will offer you a defined benefit pension. These pensions tend to be historic pensions from the past that, because they're now very difficult to keep funding and very expensive for the company, not many companies will still offer this type of pension. And many schemes that were running are now closed and people have been moved onto defined contribution pensions. So it's worth reassessing your options. If you have an old defined benefit pension which is now frozen, have a look at it, get it reviewed, because it might be best to put that into a defined contribution pension, but it will all depend on your lifestyle and you'll need to get proper financial advice to be able to assess that. I hope you found the video useful. We have recently done a webinar on defined benefit pensions versus defined contribution pensions, and I'll put a link to that in the notes and the YouTube page. Also, we've produced what's called the 10-minute retirement plan, which is a free guide that's available for you to download. Again, I'll put the links to that in the YouTube notes. Thank you.